What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Hello and welcome. My name is Claudia Granger. I'm a psychic medium here in Sedona, Arizona. And as you will hear from my accent, I am originally coming from Germany, Münster, Westphalia to be exact. And that's where my career started as a psychic medium, which I have been from birth. That means I am one of these few people who remember to sign up for a particular purpose, condense myself down into this reality, being in my mom's womb for 9 months, waiting it out patiently, being born, and so on. So I had my gift from birth, and I've seen spirits since birth, and I came here for 3 particular missions, and that's what I'm doing today. Hopefully, my 3rd mission is to explain how spirit works. So if you have any questions, Karen, thanks for having me. Just shoot.
Well, it's great to have you on, and just thank you for that intro there for the audience. You mentioned there as well that this idea of almost recalling this life between life stage, that there was, agreements in this life. Was that just like an internal knowing in a sense that you just knew that to be true?
No, I have full conscious awareness with whom I made these agreements, what for, what purpose, why, what was not accomplished in past or what I would say parallel lives, because time and space does not really exist. That means we ultimately have this life here where we focus, put our blinkers on, but we also have other lives. Normally they are dedicated to be past lives, but I see them as parallel, like roots on a tree system. Yeah, the soul is the tree, and the roots are all the golden soul strand. And at the end of a soul strand sits a soul spark, animating one body. And there are many bodies belonging to a soul. So sometimes people believe that actually a soul is crammed into this tiny spot here in the pituitary gland or the eye of Horus, but then it's not so. It's actually way more complex than that. And when we then put multidimensionality in the equation, it gets a little bit way too complicated. So try to keep it simple. In this stage in between lifetimes where we go back to soul and then we wait out or we go higher up depending on what's going on, I would say, best describe it, it's like a white light cafeteria. It's like a waiting room. And depending on what you're focusing on in your incarnation, I focused on being incarnated on Earth here. So I saw a virtual Earth, and I was asked, according to your mission, what kind of body would you like? Male, female, lighter, darker? Where would you like to incarnate on the planet? I chose Germany. who's volunteering from these fellow souls to do certain learning lessons or certain aggravations to polish the diamond of life, because we are all born a diamond, and only through abrasion do we become brilliant. So in the end, some people volunteered, including my parents, and here I went. Condensed down and further down it went, and then came the long waiting period of 9 months, the most boring time ever. Remember being born into the stale white clinical room, and then went from there, and have seen spirits, talked to spirits. Otherwise it would have been unprecedented boring in these 9 months. And that's, I think, where we sometimes see spirit faces in the photographies at womb and the sonograms, and sometimes in newspaper articles or magazines you see these little heads, and then there's a face of a man or a woman. Actually, this happens, that ancestors or other spirits visit us while we are in the womb. And of course then, seeing things what other people do not see, being prosecuted to the point that I was not allowed to see the moon anymore because some Catholic neighbors thought I was moon sick because I liked traveling through the moon, like inner world, outer world. There are some parallels. And it was quite a journey.
Well, thank you. So when you look back then, this idea of, not being present as a kid, and, other people have spoken about this as well. I mean, I'm kind of was the same as a kid, just not present in a sense for some of it, definitely not. But with yourself, not being present, the idea that you were shifting between realities. Now, when you were doing this as a child, were you aware of that this may have been a possibility that this was happening at the time?
As a child, I could see in between the worlds, and specifically at school, as a multidimensional thinker, I could follow my teacher, I could follow the conversations with the students behind me, and I could also zonk out and follow something totally different in another dimension. So then one of my teachers said, "Oh, she is too daydreamy. She cannot go to high school." So my parents were led to have an intelligence test being done, and came to be that in 4th grade, I had the intelligence quotient of a first year college student. So of course I was allowed to go to high school, but these are the little nitpickings I had to endure to validate myself as a normal human being.
So how would you then describe yourself to other people in the sense of who you are and what you do?
Well, yes, we are ultimately come all from source. I always recite, if God made us in its image, what is actually in that image? It's not an old man with a long beard. It's the spirit form. And then I further explain it with the Kirlian photography, energy. And Tesla also said, vibration and frequency. And so I try to explain it that way, with vibration and frequency, that ultimately that little thing, what leaves the body when we died, is 0.03 gram or milligram, whatever that was, I don't remember exactly, but what leaves, and there have been measurements done, that's ultimately the soul which animates this physical form. And when that leaves, there is no more. Even with coma patients, this soul, this little milligrams, is not going, even though the focus is already, let's say, on the other side, and the body is just laying there, or out of body experience, but the soul spark is still valid and doing its work with animating the body. To me, it's like, we are all one in the light. I post a little beautiful picture on Facebook where we have lots of people, and there's gold, silver strand going up, and they all lead to the same source. And ultimately, that's it.
So this idea then that we've been all things in other lifetimes, the good, the bad, the perpetrator, the victim. But we've all chosen, at a sense, we've all chosen at that deeper level, would you say, before we come here?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I love that question because it gets us right in the middle of purpose, why we are here. We chose to be in a place of duality, light and dark, positive and negative. And now here comes the challenge. First of all, in my perception, we have things to accomplish or things to explore, and some of them are karmic and others are free will. That means and I've perceived that from many, many lifetimes. If you want to be rich, you have to several times being poor. If you want to be a famous doctor, you have to be several times a patient. If you want to be super intelligent, sometimes you're dimmed down to focus on other things. And we have a little bit influence on, like I explained, how I would come down here in which body vehicle or spacesuit, as somebody says. But other things are a balancing act, and we can only go home. I mean, we have interludes in what other people would call heaven. Yes, we do. But to go to the highest high, source of source, to the absolute and ultimate oneness from which everything comes, like God breathes out and breathes us back in, for that we have to have perfect balance. And in my perception, you have to have at least 4 very, very spiritual lifetimes to be aware that you can round all your existences up to make them focus on a higher perspective. And there we come again into multidimensionality, because how can we do that? Yeah. And I know from work with past life regressions that you actually can heal certain things. So you can go back in time and space to the coordinates when something happened, and you can change certain things. And then it causes a ripple effect in time and space to balance out that theme in your life. And what happens then is you do not judge what happened anymore. It becomes like a memory. It becomes like, yes, an experience, but you're not pressured by it anymore. It doesn't have a hold over you anymore. So that's when I call this the pyramid effect sets in. Then let's say you stand in front of a pyramid, seems huge, right? One corner is very to the right and one corner is very to the left. But when you climb the pyramid to the upper point, you see the whole layout of the valley. You see how everything, the whole city is designed. And that's what we're trying to accomplish when we go up and do not judge, because the higher you get, the less the pendulum swing is there. And when we reach the third eye center, or the cornerstone, when you look at it, on our dollar bill, we have this pyramid and the all-seeing eye on top. What does that really mean? That's actually that third eye center. And from there is the stream of oneness. From there, we go in and up towards that oneness understanding. I hope this was not too lengthy.
Yeah, I mean, we can all say things are wrong and right, which to a point they are, but I think there's always something at a deeper level going on, isn't there? To me, there's that, that's almost that soul. Our soul pushes us into different circumstances that on the conscious level we're not aware of.
Yeah, but there's always cause and effect. So we should strive to be the best version of ourselves, because no matter which way, and when there's horrible things, I often ask myself, what I have signed up for. Why did I sign up for this particular drama in my life? I mean, really, did I do this to myself? And yes, because that makes me compassionate for the human condition, and we are in it. And then that brings us to why in the first place? Well, the answer seems simple, but it's not that simple, of course. The answer seems, if we're all in glorious glory, there is no differentiation possible. There is no, it reminds me of this book, The Little Soul and the Sun from Neil Donald Walsh. I'm sure you're nodding, you have read it. So that little soul wanted to have one aspect of God forgiveness. Well, another soul has to volunteer to forgive. And of course, then we forget who we really are. And so on and so forth. It creates a circle of incarnation, or cause and effect, I would say. But then again, with the incarnation, so what you're causing today could have been effect in the future, but also in the past, because timeline is artificial. Just a side note.
One question I always ask everyone as well is destiny versus free will. Is he, she destined for the path that they're on, or is there a free will aspect that's available as well?
I discuss that openly with my clients. When I do my psychic readings, I go into the most possible timeline, or the highest timeline. This is obtainable, this is achievable. And again, in the destiny compartment, no matter what the client is choosing, it will be experienced. There is no to do about it. And those are very strongly felt in the morphogeneric field of the client, or in the auric field, or in the client's timeline. So I can predict those fairly easily. Now, tricky does it get. For example, let's say a relationship. Everyone wants to know about relationships. When do I meet my soulmate? And so on and so forth. There are two ways. One is when a person is destined, it can be predicted fairly clearly. But if there is a job description, let's say a person will meet a destined partner or a partner with a certain quality, but who fulfills the job description, that's free will, that's the choice, that's a flavor choice. Yeah. So let's say the person supposed to give the client, the person, a learning lesson, but also supposed to have a child together, and la 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 la. Let's say I can see 3 people who would fill that job description. And I would say the most likely one is number A, but there's also person number B possible and number C possible. But if you choose A, then the following is this end result. If you choose person B, then there is this end result. Sometimes in these readings, it is clear, seeable when there is a crossroads, when the client makes a major decision and then goes into road A or B or C. And I'm talking about that openly. So, I mean, that's how I see the free will choices. They're feelable. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Now, sometime around 17, there was this sort of big shift in your life as well. And were you sort of studying the materials that you were sort of studying at that time as well? Had you come across the Seth material?
Yes, that's correct. I was studying theology because I wanted to do the official right thing, to work with spirit in the right way, work with source in the right way. And while I was studying, we had a student magazine, and in that student magazine, Code Now Done, there were greetings. So, of course, every student was eager to look whether they were, like in high school, who likes whom and such things. And here I was given a book, Seth material from Jane Roberts. And to me, Jane Roberts is a forerunner, as a full open door, deep trance channel. Very fascinating to watch her change of demeanor when she takes the glasses off and says, "Good evening, everyone." I mean, it just always gives me still chills thinking about it. I've watched her many times. So somebody gave me that book. I read it through. I closed it down, looked into this little student magazine, and here it was: greetings to all Seth friends. Now, you have to understand that in Germany, Seth is not a normal name. I mean, you really do not hear it. So I was intrigued. And only one sentence further, telephone number. So I called in, and the guy on the phone said, "Claudia, what took you so long? I have been waiting here for 15 minutes by the phone." And it's like, creepy. I didn't know at that moment what I should think of it. So we met. I didn't want to meet the guy in my room or in my studio. We met in a coffee shop. And he said, "Well, I have a little study group from like-minded people who are interested in these sort of things of out-of-body experience, a la Robert Monroe. He just became popular. there in the 70s. And so I asked to meet him there, and he talked about out-of-body experiences. While I was talking about out-of-body experience and other things we intended to do in that little group of friends, I flew out of my body, looked down on us talking while we were having coffee, freaked out again, and slammed into my body. I was so nauseated because I slammed in my body too fast out of this out-of-body experience that I just paid, took my bike, bicycled home. I don't even know how I got home, called all my friends up because my feet were still hanging out. I was so nauseous, I had to lay down. And it took me a while to get grounded again. So he called me and said, "What happened?" So I told him. And he understood as a teacher how to trigger memories for me, how to do certain things, just like that. So we met in the in-between worlds. We, in the group, tried to validate our experiences. We would say, let's say at 1 a.m. German morning, we would meet in fifth dimension at a round table, like the knights at a round table, and somebody would put artificially something on the table to see, for all to see, and then we would later wake up and make notes. Who was there? Who said what? So we did that regularly, and it trained me to know that my gift was real and not to dim down, because when you incarnate, you remember things, how certain things work from up there, but you dim down the longer you're here. So certain things you naturally forget, even though you came with a certain knowledge. So this person triggered a lot of memories and was a wonderful experience with all these other participants from all walks of life.
And I just want to remind people of your website, Claudia. It is?
ClaudiaGranger.com. Very simple.
Yes, and there's a lot of different services that you offer on the website, and there's many ways to contact you on that site as well. And I think you're on a lot of different social media platforms as well.
Yes, thank you. But I want to point out one thing. So we have right now an awakening. That means a lot of people notice gifts, awareness, clairaudience, where they hear certain things, or hear voices, very scary to some people, or know things in advance, or see more shadow beings, or see something, or have extraordinary dreams, but do not know what to do with it. So my guiding ones, I still have some who help me in this 3D world, said now's the time to put this together. So I offer fast track to your psychic abilities as a class to make people feel safe in their gift, not to become a psychic like me, but just to be feeling safe and hone in on their own senses, because we all have these gifts. Not everyone is meant to work with it full blown, but we all have them, and it's important to do it safely.
Yes, and there's a number of different courses that you teach on the site. You've got healing groups on there. You do healing circles. If people want one-to-one sessions, group sessions, you've taught many people and continue to open up to the ability that they're here to offer. They've done that for a long time. So you've worked with many students, and you're also an author as well.
Yeah, I have done a little kids book about, the in-between world, because children till the age of 7 see in between the worlds. So I wanted to bridge with that little children's story, stories of sparkling splendor, have a little discussion point between children and parents, so that, for example, children who say, I see a being, or I see this, or I talk to fairies, the parents are not like, oh, well, that's weird. What kind of kid do I have? So It's ultimately a kid's book for parents, how to connect. And it has a little discussion point. It has a little discussion point where parents are guided to ask children the right questions. Right now it's out of print. I put it back up at one time, but I'm also writing little of these phenomenal stories I had, which can make you really believe in God. For example, how I came here. There's a long story involved, but I want to just say one little segment of it, very similar to with assess material, that somebody knew me before I even called. Miraculously, I could trade my place. I could move here to Sedona. I could get rid of everything. But there was one piece of furniture, which was a heirloom from my grandfather, I didn't want to get rid of. So I needed transportation of this huge piece of furniture. So here rang the doorbell, whole apartment empty. And with the counter speech machine, I asked who's there, and it says, here is sale. I was told by God to move a piece of furniture. Is this Claudia? And I'm still getting goosebumps when I'm thinking about it. So I thought, oh, this is strange. Okay. Yes, I have a piece of furniture. Who are you? He said, well, I'll explain later. Let me up. So I let him up. Was nothing to steal anyway, right? And he said, oh, that's it. I'm meditating every day, and God gives me tasks every day. And today it's you. He gave me an address, and here I am. Can you believe it? This guy had to borrow a trailer to move this piece of furniture for me without cost. The only thing he had was questions about my connection to spirit. That was all he wanted as payment. So, I mean, these are the things when you know something is meant to be and you're pushed in one direction and you're carried through the process.
Yeah, I mean, all those signs that were there, that were directing you, that you were going to, eventually be leaving Germany to head to the US. And I'm sure when you look back, it's been an incredible journey. And I'm sure you've given that type of reading to others as well, to clients, where, you can see in their life path that, they're not destined to stay in the country that they're in. They're destined to go elsewhere. That's where their soul wants to take them.
Well, you might laugh, but I have a lot of clients who sometimes go out or close the Zoom call and said, what BS? Really, this person is out of her mind. For that reason, I'm recording my sessions, because I know that down the road people will re-listen and then they can hear what was said. I've had many clients who find the old tapes, from 10 years in a garage at a garage sale. And it's like, oh, there's a tape. Oh, let's hear it. And then like, oh my God, now I'm seeing what she was talking about. So it happens all the time that I get phone calls and said, well, I owe you an apology because I didn't believe the thing you were saying at the time. And here we are 4 years later, 5 years later, and so on. So I take it with a grain of salt.
So if you're giving a client a psychic reading then, how does that work for you? Is it sort of visionary in a sense? Is it a knowing? Are you connecting with their loved ones? Is it a mixture of the whole thing, the whole range of things?
Everything, depending on what the client needs and what the client wants. To hone in on what's going on, I do an intentional prayer where I ask source that only that comes forth, which is the best and highest good for everyone involved, them and me. In that prayer, there is a permittance that crossed over loved ones can come forward and declare messages. So you do not have to book a medium session with me to get messages if crossed over loved ones are there. Sometimes when they're coming very close, I draw them. I'm not a great artist, but I draw them because they're coming in, take my hand and say, this is how I looked like. Certain jewelry they wore or certain garments they wore or how they had their hair and their nose forms. I got it pretty much down. I sometimes see them at the time when they died, like older, or I can feel as an empath. I'm a soul empath. That means I can attune to the soul of a person and not only see what's going on now, but also what the soul signed up for. That's why it's easy for me when I do past life connections, link with the person's soul, go to the soul strand and see what they experience in their past life. So I really merge and conjoin with them. Coming back to the reading. So when crossed over loved ones are there or in medium sessions, I can see what they're sending me, what they're projecting onto me, how they looked when they died, how they felt when they died, who picked them up, how they want to be seen, how they want to be remembered, what messages they have for their loved ones left behind. That can also be already set in the beginning, directly after the prayer process. And then I ask the person for the birthday. Not for numerology reasons, but for me, the birthday is where the soul has signed up for to partake in the matrix of existence. So when I look at the data, when I look at the numbers, I'm getting a download. So I download with which strengths and weaknesses the person is born and what they have signed off to explore in the next 2 to 3 years. And then I discuss that, like your challenges are this, you're born with that. Your challenges are those. When you look back onto life, you want to have explored ABC. And then I go into the reading the tendencies, what they have karmically to explore in the next 3 years. And then we go into detail of months by months. Let's say the child comes in November, or the pregnancy comes then, and whatever is there. Or I also have see-through clients or real estate clients. So I do real estate scans. That means I hone in onto the time and space matrix of a property, scan what's going on there. That's all the empathic work. So the modalities are many, as you mentioned, yes. But in a regular overall overview, I use the matrix numbers or the birth date, and then go from there. In the mediumship, I just focus on the people they want to contact with, and on empathic session or channeling. You wanted to know about channeling. I channel depending on what's going on, their higher self, their soul self as a soul empath, or also beingness and entities. If they have a soul ensemble on a higher dimension and they want to link and relink the contact, relink the relay between the client and their soul group, I facilitate that too, so that they can feel safely connected again and have this system of, I'm not alone here anymore.
And just to sort of, fill in the backstory just a little bit, just so from thank you. And just to fill in the backstory, your backstory in a sense. So from 17 to, 1999, right? What was it you were doing? What was your main sort of job at the time?
So I studied theology to become a Protestant priest, again, to do the right spiritual thing. And I realized that was a little bit too narrow. So with the help of the group, I honed in, or I allowed myself to realize that I'm not alone in my talents and gifts and talking to spirits. And I had not some psychological thing going on, because everyone warned me. That was the biggest fear of my parents. That's why I shut it down in regard of anybody and became almost like a recluse, because when I couldn't talk about these things. And in the group, I could open up. It was really refreshing. So then I started to do the inner work. I went to a system called synergy therapy, where you or synergetic therapy in Germany, where you learn to go within and heal that what's going on, whatever comes up into the open. And that's one of the few therapeutic methods in Germany, which is a little bit esoteric, but also acknowledged by insurance companies. So that helped me to hone in on what can you do with your inner realities? What can you do with the pictures which come up? And then my guiding ones helped me to develop a system to dive directly into the pain point, let the pictures out, change the pictures, change. When you have the platform, you change the platform, you change the outlook on your future. And the same thing, then they taught me you can apply the same principles to the past life or parallel regression, and so on. So coming back, I then decided not to become the priest, but to do a further education in a business school, and then ended up in Human Resources Europe in an American consultancy company. And after that consultancy company, I did that for several years. I had my private classes and groups on the side. I also worked with C-suite clients against burnt out syndrome in my school, Daskalos Internum, the inner teacher, where again brought people within and let their inner wisdom talk. Not just me pressuring something of my wisdom onto them, but rather triggering their own wisdom and their own power. Specifically with C-suite clients, you cannot just say, you do this. And there's like, what? Who is this person telling me what to do? So it's better to let the person come into their own wisdom. In that, I had a great teacher, Socrates. With him, I conversed many, many years from childhood on. He was one of the best teachers ever in spirit, and he taught me how to ask questions. And to this day, I'm using these techniques. Why is this? Why is that? Asking questions, ask your guides questions. And this is one of the beginning things I talk to every student. If you have questions and you work with your guys, in the beginning, ask yes and no questions. Makes it easier. Is this real? Yes or no? Is that yes or no? Yes or no is easy to validate, even from our inner sense and our inner feelings. So after the meditation classes and healing groups at churches and so on, I then decided to quit. And they didn't want to let me go. So I had so much overtime that I came to America for a visit, met my first husband. He asked me to marry, and that's when I got rid of everything, and so many coincidences were unfolding that I could come here, super fast.
Well, yeah, with you and your husband then, it sounds like, between you both, there was, as any couples go through, there was forgiveness for each other and ourselves, and just, I guess the way that how you reacted to certain things in that time as well. We can only do our best, can't we, depending on what we're going through, and sometimes it's not good enough. But we're all here just on this earthly experience, I guess, aren't we?
Well, we have all ego, and I mean, I have ego too, and we have the 3D component, and then we can go all the way up to the higher dimensions. My guiding ones I ask them for synonyms to explain certain things. So this synonym is about the elevator effect. See your soul as a company. You're working in the post room, you're communicating, you're doing things, you're delivering mail, information, whatnot. So here comes a person and says, the CEO wants to see you. So you go into the elevator and you see other people going on other floors, in and out the elevator, and you go all the way up to the, let's say, 14th floor, 24th floor, whatever. And there's the CEO and says, please sit down, nice to see you. You are me and I'm you. Shock. How can that be? And then the CEO explains, your higher self explains that you're as important as the CEO itself. even you're doing that measly job down there in your ego 3D. And he explains to you, or she explains to you, that on all these levels, all these beings, or all these people going in and out of the elevator, they're all you, they're all part of the firm, they're part of soul, they're part of the company, and nobody, the company, the soul could not exist without all the aspects on all those levels, which all make experience. And then you say, wow. And then the CEO says, now look into the open day, look in on the city, see how far you can see, how everything gets together, how everything is interconnected in the city or in this awareness level. And you're just like, wow, I have to remember that. So you go back down, you wake up, and it's like, what? I'm still here in 3D having to do my dues. So yes, in this 3D polarity level, we have ego. You are wrong, I'm right, or I'm wrong, sorry, you're right. You know, all these polarities. It's the human condition. That's what we are here for. So I think the first thing is always not to judge ourselves, so that we can forgive ourselves first, because it makes it easier also to forgive the other. It's always two to tango in these things, as painful as they are.
So you talked about guides, and that we've all got guides, but not all of us are able to, in sense or hear or feel what's coming from the guides sometimes. But how do we know we're not connecting to our higher self sometimes compared to the guides? And what would be the difference?
Okay. When I do my little class on how to meet your guides, guardians, and crossed over loved ones, I can see when a client connects to their higher self, because when I ask the question, how long is this being going to be with you? How long is this being going to stay with you? And it says forever and forever. That's mostly an indicator it might be your higher self, because it's forever. And the higher self is always connected to the soul, right? So the guides come and go, but the higher self is always present. So that's one indicator. So I developed a protocol where we can ask, I go to a certain place, I put the space holders in, I invite the guides all to come and sit, make themselves visible to the client. And then we follow protocol. How long have you been with this person, client? How long you're going to stay? On what frequency level do you operate? What's your name? What's your job description? Do you have a gift today? Do you have a particular message for the upcoming time? What's the mechanic? What's the operational connection? Is it a feeling, a sense, a symbol? And any particular things you would like the client to do. And it's not me talking, the client connects, because my guiding ones have taught me that if you do it yourself, you own the information. It's different than if a psychic comes and says, oh yeah, you have ISIS and you have this and you have that. But it's all nice, sounds good. But to have conscious and authentic connection with your guide is a totally different story. And then, so after that process of questionnaire, that's the first contact, then I ask them for healing and a blessing to be given to the client, so that there is an energy understanding. And after that, the client can always connect back, ask personal questions. We can also ask, do I know you from another lifetime? If yes, show me pictures. Show me impressions about it. And then we can also have aspects of our own soul self, which were incarnated. Let's take the concept of a tree of roots. All the roots belong to a tree at the same time. Now, some roots die, yeah, or in some awareness levels, we die in another lifetime. So now that soul spark goes in and up, realizes it's part of something bigger, and then has a choice. Do I go further up, Or maybe am I a guide for one of my other soul spark mates or other aspects of my soul? So it can be that your soul is also part of your guides. You could say it's part of your higher self, but it's also another aspect of your soul self. And that one can guide you in certain themes. Let's say you were a shaman in another lifetime. So that shamanic self might be a guide in this lifetime, and you might see how you looked like in another lifetime and see it as a guide. So there's, again, this indicator, how long are you going to stay and so on. But if we ask, do we know each other from another life? And the persona or the beingness says yes, and we see the picture, we can ask, are you an aspect of my soul self? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then we are talking to another aspect of our soul. If it's no, it's a totally external guide.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I think with a lot of guests on this show, I talk about discernment and what do you do to sort of keep away negativity away from you? Because I'm sure you see clients in all sorts of positive states and in some very negative states as well.
Yes, I do. And I do clearings and relinquish ghosts and demons and all that as a whole different branch of work. But what I do for my personal, in between, I'm using little frankincense. In between clients, I put a little frankincense on my hand and kind of like clean. And that gives me a refresher, and anything dense does not like frankincense. The Catholic Church really knew what they were doing when they were using frankincense at church to transmute and transform the low frequency levels. Then I do a golden light meditation. Very, very simple. That's my corner and foundation stone for students, to envision a golden sun over the head as a gate for the higher self. One ray flows into the top of your head, every single cell of your brain, eyes, nose, mouth, throat, neck, shoulders, arms, hands, fingertips, along the spine and muscle structure, into the heart and chest opening both wide, solar plexus to make it radiant, and so on, through the feet into the ground, taking with it all that which is not conducive to one's well-being, stress of the day, whatever it is, and then let it overflow from the heart into the aura, the electromagnetic field, until we are sitting or standing, imaginative, in a golden light bubble. Really breathing in the gold, breathing it out to the heart and into our aura electromagnetic field. And then I let him condense it to a golden ring of fire. And this, when it's condensed to a golden ring of fire, low frequency do not come through. And then there are other layerings you can do. And that I do myself. And with that, I start every healing session so that, or even healing circles, so that we are all attuned. We have our strengths, our energy strengths, and nothing can come and divert us. Same with channeling. How do I know that I have pure spirit besides setting an intention? I make it so that my channel is protected. That's why I'm always so admirational of Jane Roberts, who had this trust and aptitude to be a full-blown window where anybody could slip in and say, I take you over now.
I say this in more recent shows that the level at which the Seth books have stood the test of time, you can still pick the Seth books up nowadays, right? And there's still something new to glean from them. And you've got to have done the work on yourself, which you have, most definitely. You have. And I think with you being a channeler as well, I think it only makes you a better medium, a better psychic, because you've done a lot of work on yourself to get to that level.
Yes. Seth explained it very logical for the left brain minded. While Jane Roberts wrote this trilogy of Oversoul 7, from her experience as spirit when she was flung out of her body. And I love it. The writing style is so intuitive, so easygoing. And I love it that she talks about Oversoul 7. So, seventh level, seeing maybe 7 other incarnations and how they interconnect. And to me, that's one of the must reads for my students. I always say, read Trilogy of Oversoul.
You mentioned on your website as well about the one's change in attitude can change anything in a sense. Especially when it comes to illness, you see this with clients in yourself that that may be very ill when they've come to see you, but it with that positive outset, and it's the ones with the positive attitudes and outsets that are the ones that tend to break free from the illness sometimes, most times, not all the time, but they in general there is a way forward.
I always talk about illness as dis-ease. We are not at ease with circumstances, with our existence. We are in disharmony. We are not in harmony. We are out of sync. Now, certain dis-easements are destined. So no matter what the attitude, we cannot do much about it. And I had to learn to differentiate that too, because, when you start as a healer, you want to make the client better. You want to make the client better. The ego talking, I want to make a client better. But when you work it, you realize that there's higher powers at be. And you will understand very clearly that A, you are not in charge. Higher things are in charge. You're just the instrument. And B, without the client's understanding why the diseasement happened, oftentimes you can, as a healer, heal it and it comes right back. A week later, months later. And my guiding ones have made me aware of it to then talk to the client about certain things or events in their life, that there's an emotional component. And that's actually what got me started into readings, because originally I come from the field of healing. I didn't even want to tell people anything. They said, tell them this, tell them that, tell them the other. It's like, no. I don't want to be responsible for other people's well-being. I don't want to do it this way. But they said, no, you have to tell them. So I started. And yeah. So sometimes we just have to bite in a sour apple and do what we're called to do. One thing I want to mention, when we feel miserable, there's one thing how we can discern, is it meant to be or not? And I go directly to source. I say, go source, if this misery circumstance is meant for me to experience, please let me see the bigger picture so that I might understand and agree and learn. If not, if it's just a projection from some evil something or other, no matter where it comes from, take it away. I don't want it. So it's just a two-pronged process, very simple. If it's yours, if it's meant to be, show me the bigger picture. If it's not, take it away. And so far that has served me to give great clarity in my own personal life. And it helped me also to differentiate for myself what is my burden and what's not my burden to carry. So I can only relate to that as a discernment process.
I think that's very powerful, to surrender to what is and realize that where you are, and as much as you want to change things, of course, everything changes in the end, but there's a timing to it, isn't there? That you need a bit of patience, and self-love is important. I want to just mention that as well. That's something that I think can be very useful throughout the whole process of, being here on planet Earth as well. We sometimes forget to do that, don't we? The sort of bit of self-care as well, on top of the patience.
Yes, to a certain degree. Because again, if it's your turn to have certain miseries in a lifetime, you can make a headstand and it will not get better. So that's the point of surrendering. That's what I just mentioned about this two-prong approach. I surrender to your will, but if it's not your will, take it away. So that's one. So if you are meant to have some drama and that's karmic, you can have all the positive attitudes you want and still will not work. But also, let's say you're a spirit and you haven't been incarnated a lot in 3D density like this Earth, you might not have any concept of money and what it does here. You might not have any concept of manifesting in 3D. So it can be very frustrating because you come, let's say, from a spec of oneness where everything is shared and everything is equal and everything is up there nice. And you come into this ravaging existence of survival of the fittest. You might be shocked, your system might be shocked. So then all this talk about, oh, you just manifest might not really catch on because you have not developed yet the skills. Now, for a manifestation, one thing works when you work with your subconscious, seeing in pictures, and then attach a feeling to it. Oh, it would be so nice to having this partner and doing A, B, C, D, E with it. Or it would be so nice to stand on a podium and hold that gold medal or whatever. Or it would be so nice to have a vision and then have a feeling attached with it. That to me is the easiest way to manifest. But if it's not happening and not happening and not happening, it might not be meant to be. Very simple. And you can make a headstand and it still doesn't work. So I can only say to some people who have frustrations about manifesting, sometimes it's just not meant to be. And then surrendering to what is can be a huge relief. And then also living in the moment. As it's always so beautifully said, the past is not there anymore, even though it has an effect. The future hasn't happened yet, so the power is in the now. What does it really mean? In our haste to go over here and then over here and then over here, we overlook that the moment where we're here can have beauty. And one of my girlfriends say, don't love the dramas for the gifts, because every drama has a gift. There's a solution, there's an understanding, there's wisdom emerging. But don't love the dramas for the gifts, don't be a drama queen, as she always said. Anyway, so being in the focal point of now and seeing the silver lining, looking for the silver lining can also be very helpful to just like what works instead of what doesn't work. One of the things is easily said, let's say, I don't have money because I don't have a partner because my life doesn't work because I'm because the negative comes easy. But what about doing the same sentence in something positive, like I have the partner because, and then the higher self and subconscious will fit in, or fill in the blanks. Or I have money because, and then the subconscious and higher self will fit in the blanks. So that's an exercise I oftentimes give out to say, I have this because. And the because is the reason then why we will achieve that, unbeknownst ourselves. For example, let's say spiritual people oftentimes believe if they have a penny too much, it's something bad. Yeah, you see it all the time. People live in their cars and they're so spiritual and they're all up there, but they're not grounded. And when I then ask, well, why do you not? Because a penny too much is unethical, because this and this. So the concept, the constructs are there. And then when I ask, well, let's say you're a spiritual person and you have a lot of money because, And all of a sudden, it's because I'm serving so many clients, because I'm doing good in the world, because I'm sharing freely, and so I'm given, because all of a sudden positive things emerging. And with that, subconscious is retrained and allows to open up for new things to happen.
We're living in times of great change right now. That has been going on for a while, and it will continue to do so, I feel. We're not out of it yet, by a long shot. And I think the most important things in these times is to thrive by living in purpose, and doing the things that really drive you, or that are helping you to progress in other ways. And by coming from that space of living in purpose, it's got a massive ripple effect to everyone that's around you, and that's what matters in these times.
Right. Thanks for bringing that up. So first of all, when we are working on ourselves, we become an acupuncture point on the planet of light. When we make ourselves better and lighter, we cause, indeed, as you mentioned, a ripple effect. Very well put. My guiding ones talked about that particular virus, which I do not want to name because we do not want anything censored. But when it first started, I was told to do a newsletter about cause and effect here. And they said, no matter what you're believing, whether it's created or not created, whether it's this or this, it has its purpose. And it has actually 5 different purposes. It has a spiritual purpose. It has a economical purpose, political purpose, personal purpose, and so on. And I found it fascinating at that time to see with what attitude people were dealing with the situation, from exhilarated finally not to have to commute to totally depressed because of isolation. And a lot of things go along with it. We gave nature a breather. Everything was shut down. The waters in Venice let the dolphins back in because they were clean again. No smog over Hong Kong and not such things. We gave Earth a breather. And then, so that was one of the spiritual purposes, but also for people to get a breather out of the rat race. And even the people who experienced that thing, who were diseased at the moment, but they could travel in their inner world, their experience, rethink their life. And we're seeing a lot of people who are now self-employed, don't want to be in the rat race anymore, have other ideas, give it a try. And that's part of this awakening process. So the vibration is higher. Even the earth is spinning faster. So everything has its reason. But you can also say, certain people gain more, other people lose more. And this has been prognosticized for me, or prophesized for me, for many years, way before I came to America. My guiding ones are telling me, remember the time when the earth will consist of 2 earths, 2 realities. And I didn't know what they meant. And it said, you will see that there will be such a rift between realities and what we're seeing right now. And then it will snap at one time, and people will totally live in absolute different realities, and they will not be able to understand the other side if they not want to see the bigger picture, the oneness picture. So spiritual people are called to not judge this hand or that hand, the right or the left, but they're supposed to look a little bit further, higher up. What could be?
I'm sorry to butt in there. I just want to say, yes,
Yeah.
As bumpy as it is right now, no matter how bumpy it is as well, that there is a change coming. You can't be off seeing that, but it's not the end.
Right. I absolutely agree. It is a clearing. And my guiding ones said it started in 2020, and it's going up to 2030. The 20 was the first year, like a first year of a moon cycle. 20 has also the energy of the moon. And in this first year was just to shake her up a year, to see what we are made out of in our emotional, what is still stored, what is still hidden emotionally. So all these movements came up. And then 2021 was about me and my hidden emotions and undigested emotions, feelings, or in my intuition. Now we're living in 2022, and it's about the mastership of these emotions, the mastership of our intuition, and the mastership of our undigested emotions, which are still giving us pain processing. And then next year, we're going into a major shift year. Then we're going into a co-creator year, 2024. Then we're going into a year of your higher communication, and then a year of intuitive love, or love will regain a bigger part in our lives. And then in 2027, we see cause and effect really clearly and come up with new solutions. 28 is a year of authenticity, the last shaker uppers, but also then being authentic, real, and truthful. And that's where my guiding ones say that's one of the goals. So by 2029, before a big shift happens, we all have to come to the understanding we are self-sufficient, self-created, self-reliant, no more blame, shame game. And when we have achieved that, the shift will be easy. If not, it's a little bit more dramatic. But that's what we're here for.
And I'm sure the work that you're doing now over here is now more accepted, as you say, in your home country as well. Yeah, there's even a spiritual movement going on in Germany right now, I would have thought.
Yes, absolutely. My parents were absolutely horrified when they learned I did a lot of healing work on the side, because at that time you could go to prison for it when I started. And they were really relieved when I ended up in America and did it over here, because the authorities were really strict. Even if you were part of organizations like spiritual healing groups and whatnot, and they were with certain licensing, but still it was risky. Now there are many people who do Reiki, many people who do spiritual work, many people who channel. Certain things are still a little bit behind. I mean, America is, especially here in Sedona, is a huge hotspot for a conglomerate and shimmering of talents. But Europe is catching up. There are some very predominant people, and one of them, they call themselves the Matrixers. They explain existence and reality really nicely. They teach how you awaken your pituitary gland and cleanse it so that you can have easy out-of-body experience. Ultimately, they explain to the world what this one gentleman, we experienced in a small group. Very, very similar. And if any audience is German, I would look up the Matrixer or the Matrixer. On YouTube, they have a channel and they send out also newsletters.
Yeah, I mean, you're based in Sedona, and I'm sure there's a reason why you're there. And without putting words in your mouth, what do you think the reason why you're there is?
Well, I was called here because of remembrance, because this area is very familiar to me from previous lifetimes. I sometimes go around the corner and remember scenarios, especially between Flagstaff and Albuquerque, that stretch there, and the Hopi region and so on, have strong memories there. However, I'm going to move in a few years, believe it or not, to Arkansas. And I have a nice predecessor there, Dolores Cannon, who also lived in Arkansas. But there is my next calling. There are certain fields in Arkansas, crystal fields, Mount Ida, and so on, which I'm supposed to work with the crystal grid. But that will not be before 2024. Until then, I am bound. Even if I wanted to move, they wouldn't let me move until then.
And I just want to remind people of your website, Claudia. It is
claudiagranger.com. Very simple. And if somebody doesn't know how Granger is spelled, it's like Ranger with a G up front.
I just want to say it's been a complete pleasure having you on. All the links for everything we've spoken about are in the description below. And just thank you so much for what you do and for coming on and giving us your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and having all these intelligent questions. It was fun to be in your show. Thank you.